Hello everyone and welcome to the Anime Void. I'm Brian, your host, and it's time for part 2 of talking about Type Moon OCs as servants. This time, we're covering the 5th category, which I'm renaming to Moon People. If at any point I start sounding like a raving lunatic, that's only because Nasu is a raving lunatic. The characters in Aptas were at least explainable in a single sentence each. With the Moon People, I have to set up lore for any of this to make sense. I will do my best to keep the explanations as concise as humanly possible so that it's all digestible. First, let's ease on into this by going over the supercomputer that's inside of the moon, but only sometimes. Moon's not just haunted, Moon's sentient. And trust me, this is important to know in order for most of these characters to make sense, but as promised, I will keep it brief. The Moon Cell is a collection of photonic crystals that record and store data, acting as a magic supercomputer to put it into the simplest terms possible. In the Fate Extra universe, it's always been there, while in the Stay Night universe, it might have been there, but it did nothing, or it wasn't there at all. Doesn't really matter. In the Tsukihime universe, it absolutely did not exist because it contradicts with Crimson Moon, aka Type Moon, but it is an equivalent to Crimson Moon. Those were a lot of words for something that mean nothing without context, but take the context clues that this thing is the namesake of the entire damn company, and you can take a stab at the power scaling? So the Moon Cell is something stupidly powerful, so much so that it can act as a holy grail, and that is a lesser quality of it. We don't necessarily have to go over the entire story of Fate Extra or CCC, thankfully, to understand the characters we will be discussing. The setting will suffice. It's a massive computer, database, and even a virtual reality known as Seraph that resides within the moon. People can even go inside like they're the Digidestined on their way to File Island and have Holy Grail Wars in there because it has a connection to the Throne of Heroes. Or has its own Throne of Heroes. The distinction doesn't matter. Anyway, this level of advanced systems needs a form of sentience to overlook it. Make sure it functions and continues operations, so there are a bunch of AIs running things. One AI is Sakura Mato. To make a very long story short, this AI ended up falling in love with the protagonist of Fate Extra, Hakuno Kishinami, and eventually started becoming irregular. To sort of fix herself, she would make a backup of herself that held the love she had for Hakuno, and it's this backup that would become BB and act autonomously from the original AI. BB would take control of the far side of the moon and thus all of Seraph pretty much. Again, I am simplifying things to make them understandable. This is not a play-by-play of CCC, but hopefully that is enough of a grasp to understand that BB became very powerful. She controls the Moon Cell. She is able to download and assimilate all of this knowledge from the Moon Cell, becoming a super AI, and even create her very own class of servant known as Moon Cancer. Quick aside about Moon Cancers, it really is the BB class. All but one heroic spirit within the class has ties to BB. Base BB and BB Pele are obvious. Ganesha has this class more or less by BB's permission, which is why she doesn't have a unique class card. Summer Kiara stole the class more or less, so she has her own class card. Kiara also states that the class also involves scarring the moon, though to me, that seems a bit ambiguous for the hyper-specific class card art, and we'll touch on Archetype Earth later. Also, Piccolo Moon Cancer when? So now, with that explanation out of the way, we've pretty much established BB's power and right to be a servant in her own right. She would actually continuously improve herself and her functionality, but would discover a limit to that. Eventually, her programming would basically collapse in on itself if she continued this way. So, for stabilization, she splintered off her processes and ego into autonomous beings to help her run the systems. These 5 beings are the Sakura Five: Passionlip, Meltreless, King Protea, Violet, and Kazura Drop. These are more than just autonomous AI programs, however. BB designed them to be artificial composite heroic spirits. They are of the alter ego class, quite the literal term that got a bit muddled over time in Fate Grand Order. But they aren't just bits of BB. They also have divine spirits mixed into their spirit cores as well. Though in this case, it's more like aspects and bits of authority rather than a pseudo-servant-like possession, as the Sakura Five have strong individual personalities. This makes them their own tier of servant known as High Servant. Other alter egos in FGO, such as Sitanai and the Alien God Apostles, also have this distinction. Passionlip is a composite of Parvati, Durja, and Brunhild, and the emotions that she covers from BB are love and hate. Also, her cleavage is a literal pocket dimension. Meltreless is a composite of Artemis, Leviathan, and Saraswati, covering pleasure, and also being best girl. King Protea is a composite of Titan, Ervata, and Tiamat. Basically, all Earth mothers. She covers yearning and is also big. Those 3 are actually in FGO, but I will cover the 2 that aren't as well. Kazura Drop's only known component is Murian, and she covers affection. And finally, Violet is a composite of Medusa, Apsara, and Melusine. Her emotion is purity. The 5 are clearly designed to be servants both in-universe and as original characters in Type Moon, so them being servants in FGO is understandable, even if Kazura Drop has yet to make a proper appearance, and Violet is barely even mentioned. Next, we move on to Kiara Sessioin. I don't know how to pronounce that, bear with me. She is one of the Fate characters that is a recurring character throughout the Type Moon multiverse, even outside of the Fate series, even being referenced in the Tsukihime remake. Though there she has the family name Kishioin, they are implied to be the same person, given the shadow that Kishioin is casting in this image. This is all important as it sets the precedent that she is something of a cosmological constant. She exists in some form in any universe, and always has the potential to be an evil of humanity. Would love to know what her origin is. And yes, I am fully aware that there are several Type Moon characters that appear in all sorts of titles, but I just think it's very important to focus on the evil of humanity part with this one. The initial Kiara that we see in Fate Extra CCC was a massive cult leader that indirectly drove every single one of her followers to take their own lives. Because they adored her, because they hated her, because they lusted for her, because they depended on her. She was a salvation and a blight to all she would preach to. She loved humanity, though she only recognized herself as human. She wished to save them by embracing them body and soul, and yet she was intrinsically something that would destroy humanity. In one timeline, not too dissimilar to CCC, the man who would become Emiya Alter would hunt down and kill Kiara himself, taking out many of her innocent followers as well. But the Kiara in CCC proper would go on to become a master in the Mooncell Holy Grail War, and being the one to release BB. Later, she would assimilate Passionlip, Meltreless, and BB to take over the Mooncell, becoming the Devil's Bodhisattva, enemy of the enlightened, embodiment of self-love that holds pleasure above all. This is Beast 3R. Suffice to say, if you think that you want to tap that, don't. Everyone on this list is someone that you should not stick it to, but Kiara is number 1 in that regard, and second is far, far away. Us mere mortals cannot possibly comprehend this level of unmitigated, insatiable horny. She does to the earth what Nina did to Table-kun, and so much worse. Hack the planet? She fucks the planet. Just the tip alone would bring you to heights undreamed of, where pleasure becomes mind-breaking torture, where you beg for it to end. It is a hell of pure desire, evil in its temptation, and effective in its manifestation. Do not do it. Save yourself. This alone would generally be enough to show how she could qualify as a servant, not just by the power she gains, but by her immense influence as a just normal human as well. But there's more to the story. In the Fate Grand Order timeline, Kiara never became a cult leader. She was a true savior to people, a saint even, though was scorned for it by those who profit off of suffering, eventually leading her to becoming a therapist in the Seraphix branch of Chaldea. It's here that she came into contact with the demon god Zepar, who linked her to the CCC version of herself. The CCC version, as an evil of man, would overpower both demon god and this innocent version of herself. However, when defeated, the beast would make a choice before she faded away. She would create an alter ego of herself and summon it into Chaldea. After all, though she is one of humanity's greatest enemies, her greatest desire is to save it. Pretty sure this video is going on long, so if you've made it this far, you should hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. These videos are work and I would greatly appreciate it. But now, onto the last chapter that we have to cover. Archetype Earth is, well, I'll be honest, she's probably the most straightforward of the bunch. Firstly, she is a true ancestor, which is akin to Fate's version of vampires. But like, Alucard levels of being a vampire, not just a simple blood drinker like Carmilla or Vlad III, ironically. So, power-wise alone, even if you don't know the full extent of what a true ancestor is, which needs its own video, and I do not promise that one, the comparison should suffice to understand why she can easily be a servant. In some regards, she could have been apt-ass, I suppose, but here we are. Also, this isn't even the first time this character has been a servant, or somewhat this character. Arc appears in Fate Extra as a berserker, though how she exists there is questionable given that it's already established that the Extra universe and the Tsukihime universe are incompatible, which kind of proves that fan service takes priority over logic, which does make these two videos pretty pointless, I guess. Though, it should be noted that we don't truly summon Arc in FGO, we specifically summon Archetype Earth. This is Arc's true self, again in a simplified fashion, and she is an Ultimate One. To further make things wildly simplified, an Ultimate One is a representation of a planet, each one in the solar system, and our moon has one. They are the strongest being on their respective planet, and still vastly outclass the normal species on others. This also means that we need Art of Kiara and Archetype Earth for obvious reasons, and we are not going to try and break down the logistics of summoning her in Fate Grand Order. Much like Extra, she's probably not canon anyway. As for why she's Moon Cancer, that's never actually explained. Though if we take Kiara's comment about a qualification being that one needs to scar the moon, then we can either say that it came about from how the moon was formed by crashing into Earth all that time ago, or how the moon gets craters due to asteroids and such getting pulled into Earth's gravitational pull, but ending up hitting the moon instead. Yeah, it's weak, but we gotta work with what we got. And with that, that covers the fifth category of the Type Moon OCs as servants, Moon People. I truly hope that I did justice in explaining all of these while still being concise enough that it wasn't outright painful to listen to. It is a fine line to walk. If you enjoyed the video, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And with all that said, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you next time in the void. Later.